Hi, in today's video I'm going to be covering using CGI scripts with the w3m command line browser. This will allow us to execute scripts by running a hotkey to open links with video players or audio players. So in a previous video I showed you a keymap for w3m, which would basically take the URL and run it through grep and sed to remove the Google redirect. And what I've done is simplify this by putting the code in a CGI script. And basically what I can now do is just run a keyboard shortcut and it's going to run this script. And then importantly, it's also going to run the back command in w3m to move the browser back a buffer so that you don't get a buffer showing output of shell command after you finish playing the video. So what I'm doing is basically running 3 different scripts with 3 different keyboard shortcuts to either open the video or use task spooler to queue up videos, or a script I wrote called pinch, which will extract the audio and send it to MPD player. So what I'll do is open up the script here. So first of all, let me make this a bit bigger. So this is a shell script, and what I wanted to cover is there are actually some built-in variables inside w3m called w3m current link and w3m URL. So what I'm going to do is shift across to w3m and just open up Google, for instance. And what I'm going to do is come across to the page, and let's just say, let's search for w3m, and what I'm going to do is go to the video tab, and if you press U on the keyboard, it's going to show you the URL down here. So if I press U, I think it's U, isn't it? Or C. Yeah, C. You can see this is the URL for the current page. And if I move the cursor down to a link and press C, no, it's obviously another keyboard shortcut. I can't remember. But basically, what I wanted to get onto is that there's 2 variables for the current page and the current link. So if I run a shell command in w3m, let me just actually just and run env-sort, what you're going to see is a list of variables on the system. And we've got sort of stuff for shush username, but what we're interested in is the section for w3m. And what you can see down here is you can see the current link. So this is the link that the cursor is currently over. And the other thing that we want to look at is the w3m URL, which is the URL of the search page. So we've got the current link and the URL. So basically what that means is we can access those variables in a script. So what we can do is create a CGI script and create a variable called URL, for instance, and we set that to be the variable w3m current link, which is going to be the link under the cursor. Now what we're going to do in this next section is we're saying if this contains a link, basically, then we're going to create a new variable and store the output of this command. So we're going to echo the URL through grep, and what we're doing is we're searching for google.com $q equals, which is the if I switch back here, is it U, peak U? Yes, U. When you're over the link, and you'll see that's the current link. So you can see here this has got the Google .com question mark, and then it's got the YouTube video which is encoded here, and then and the bunch of redirect code. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically search for stuff that is google.com ? And then we're going to search for anything but the and symbol up until the and symbol. So that's going to capture the actual link without the google.com and the redirect at the end. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pipe it through one line of Python. And basically what this is going to do is this is going to decode the URL. So if I switch back to here, as I said, you'll see watch, and this should be you know, like v ? equals and then the ID. So we're going to use Python to actually decode the URL. And then in the next section down here, what we're going to do is check if the result has got anything in it. So basically whether it's the current link has got google.com on it, we're on a search page. If it has, we're going to then set the URL to be equal to the result, basically be the URL without the google.com and the redirect, and also it's going to be URL decoded. Then after that, what we're doing is we're saying if that command fails, what we want to do is we want to set the URL to be just the URL, which would be the current link. So basically what that means is we can either handle links that are Google search results and extract the URL, or if it's not a Google page, it's just going to give us the actual link the cursor's on. And then finally down here, what we're going to do is we're going to say if the URL isn't the current link, basically, if the current link is empty, then we know that we're not over a link and we just want the URL of the page. So we can say URL equals w3m underscore URL. So we've got two options there, either the current link on the page, so either the link here that we're the cursor's over, or the actual page, because we might be viewing a page which has got a video embedded in it that we want to play, or the other option is we might have a link that we want to open with a video player. So we can cover both those scenarios. And then basically all we do down the bottom is we run MPV with the no terminal option. And that's important because if you don't do that, what will happen is MPV has a on-screen display that will display in the terminal showing the progress bar of the video as it plays. And what will happen is that will replace w3m in the terminal. So to prevent that, we run the no terminal option, which will disable the on-screen display and just pop up the video player. And then we just give it the URL, which is either going to be the current link or the page we're on. So let's have a look how that works. And what I'll just do is just shift back to the keymap. So what we're going to do is run this command, and what I'll do is I'll just start up the screen key. So what we're going to do is run mn, which is going to run this script, the MPV CGI script. So if I'm up here and I run mn, that's going to pop up in a second. Hopefully. Yeah, there we go. So now what's happened there is basically it's taken this link and it's passed it through the CGI script and removed the Google redirect and also decoded the URL. Then it's opening it in MPV player with the no terminal option, which prevents the on-screen display, which would appear in the terminal here over w3m. So I can now put that full screen or quit it. And what I want to mention next is this other option we've got here. Turn the screen key off a sec. So first of all, what we're doing is we're running the read shell command and the path of the CGI script, which has to be executable. You have to run change mod +x. on the CGI script, otherwise it's not going to work in w3m. And then after we've run that shell script, what it's going to do is it's going to run the back command in w3m, because otherwise what happens is when you quit the video, what will happen is it will return to a previous previous buffer that will say displaying the output of the read shell command. So what happens when you run this is basically it runs this read shell command and creates a sort of new buffer, opens MPV, and then we run back, and what it does is it puts us back onto this page here. So whenever I open one of these videos, just pressing MN on the keyboard there, open up.
For those,
see, when I quit this, if I didn't have that back option, what would happen is w3m here in the terminal would be replaced by the buffer that had been created, and it would say read shell, and you'd have to click back again. So if I quit the video here, you don't even notice it's actually shifted back a buffer. So that's the first option we've got, is opening videos here directly from links in Google search results. So what I'll look at next is the same thing, but basically using the task spooler command to queue videos up and open them full screen on the monitor on my second display. So I can set look here. So basically, it's exactly the same bit of code here as in the previous script, where we get the link for the current link, pipe it through grep in Python to see if it's a Google search result, and extract the URL. And then basically what we're doing down here is changing a couple of options. We prefixing the MPV command with TSP, which stands for Task Spooler. And Task Spooler is a command line program that lets you queue up commands to be executed one after another. And basically what this allows us to do is when we're searching with w3m, we can run this script, and it's going to queue up any videos that we search for, and got the cursor over the link. So basically it's going to queue up all the videos we select in the browser and then play them one after another automatically. And what it's going to do is it's going to use these two options with MPV. We're going to use the --FS option to put it full screen, and we're also specifying the screen that we want it to go full screen on. So screen 1 is my external monitor, so screen 0 would be my laptop, screen 1's the external monitor. So what this will do is whenever select a link to play, it's going to automatically put the video on the larger screen and put it in full screen. And then basically we give it the URL. So it's exactly the same bit of code, just change down here to prefix the MPV command with TSP, and we're removing the no terminal option because we're putting it full screen on the second display. So what I'll do now is just come up here and run the keyboard command for that. So what I'll just do is remind myself what that is. So M comma. So I'll come here to M comma. What's going to happen is in a second this is going to open full screen on this display. So I'm capturing the external monitor, so you can see it's opening there. And because I'm just capturing the external monitor, I can't show you queuing it up. I've shown you that in the previous video. But M comma, and that's going to.
For those of you that know,
there. So that's basically queuing videos up. I showed you this in the previous video where I was catching the terminal on my laptop and then the external display. So basically all you do is just when you're over any of these links, you just run M comma or the keyboard shortcut you've defined, and it's going to basically queue these videos up and play them on the second display when one finishes, it's going to go straight into the second one full screen. So that's how we can queue videos up. So the next one is the pinch script. And basically it's exactly the same thing, block of code up here, and the option we're changing is we're running the pinch script, which I'll show you, with the -i option and the URL. And if I come across to pinch, basically come down here. First of all, what we're doing is we're setting the MPD host socket, which I covered in a previous video, and we're using ytdl and basically passing it into MPD using the MPC command line program, and also running notify send. So you'll get a desktop notification showing you what you've queued up. So what I'll do is I'll just use some of these videos just as an example to send the audio to. So what I'm going to do also is open NC NPC. See, there's nothing there. I run the keyboard shortcut, which is MK, and in a second that should pop up. Go.
This one's going to be on a command line.
Pause that, and you can see we're getting a desktop notification saying now playing, and the URL we're playing. And what I can do also is queue another one up. So keyboard shortcut MK, and see this one's queued. So what happens is basically it will queue the videos up, queue the audio from the videos up in MPD player. I can move across.
For those of you that know me personally,
say that. So that's basically taking the URL, passing it to the pinch CGI script, which calls the pinch script and takes the URL and passes it to MPD player. So we can basically queue up audio and video, be played one after the other, straight from within w3m. So that was the sort of pinch script. So we've got 3 scripts and 3 keyboard shortcuts. One to open MPV just regularly on the monitor that's got focus. Secondly, we can use the task spooler command to queue videos up and get them to open full screen on a particular display. And finally, we've got another script which will basically strip out the audio. It will grab the audio link from the video and pipe it to MPD player, which is useful if you want to listen to music from YouTube, or if you just want to listen to the audio from someone's podcast on YouTube. So those are the 3 keyboard shortcuts, and basically they're exactly the same: read shell, and then the path to the script, and then the back option to shift you back a buffer to the page you're on, rather than showing your page saying output of shell command. So exactly the same thing. And if I just come across to the CGI script bin, so what you need to do is actually make all these scripts executable. So what you would do, you can see permissions here. They're all executable. So what you need to do is change mod +X and the name of the script, because otherwise it's not going to run within w3m. So that's an important thing to do. And there's another thing I wanted to cover with w3m, as well as showing you how to see the environmental variables in your current session and for w3m. The way you do that is start up screen key again. So you press Shift and 1, and that says execute shell, and then we run env pipe and run it into sort, like that. And you can see this is basically showing you environmental variables for your shell and username, all that kind of stuff, but also w3m down here. So you can see the page URL, and you'd be able to see the current URL somewhere. Current link. You can see current link is empty because the cursor is not over a link, and that's how you can see the environmental variables. The other thing that I wanted to cover was the commands that w3m uses. So ls user share docs w3m, and in here you will see readmes for different stuff like cookies. But the one we're interested in is this one here, readme.func. So readme. So you can see these are some of the commands that you can run from within w3m. So command here, that's what we're that's how we run particular commands, and you come through. You've got execute shell, which we ran in, from within w3m to show the environmental variables. External link, that's another one you can use to actually take the external link and run it with an external browser or a script. The other ones I wanted to cover down here because there's some differences with them. There's pipe shell and pipe buffer. Basically what this does is, if I come back to the keymap file, so what you can do is you can run a command and then like read shell, and what you can do is you can actually run command after this. So if I come back here, we've got pipe buffer and pipe shell, and if you run pipe buffer, depending on how you've got your script set up, you can run a script here and then run pipe buffer, and it will take the output of this script. So it's a bit like running a pipe between two commands, and basically what happens is it will then pick up sort of the output of this script, so you can use it in this section here. But the issue with using pipe buffer is what happens is I tried sort of setting it to pipe, print the URL out to the screen, and then running pipe buffer and then using MPV player. But what happens is it keeps the buffer open when you've got MPV player open. So what happens is w3m will basically run a script, open a new buffer and pipe it into into MPV, but that buffer will basically replace w3m in the terminal, and it won't you can't go back to w3m without quitting the video. So doing it that way is actually no good. Using the pipe buffer command. You've also got pipe shell, but that doesn't allow you to take the output from the previous command, whereas pipe buffer does. And then you've also got stuff down here like read shell. So you've got shell and you've got read shell, but you can see here shell, execute shell output, shell command and display output, and read shell, execute shell command and display output. The description is exactly the same, but they behave differently. When you run shell, what you have to do is you can run a command and then it will actually prompt you in the terminal to press a key to continue. which is no good if you're running scripts, because it's going to, you run a keyboard shortcut, you don't want to have to press another keyboard shortcut to dismiss a dialog. So that's why you want to use read shell instead of shell, because read shell doesn't pop up a little button saying click a key to continue. So these are some of the commands that you can run in w3m within your key maps. So the location for those is user share doc w3m, and you've got readmes for all this stuff. You also have user share doc w3m examples. Bonus, I think that contains CGI scripts. So you can see here there's a load of CGI scripts for w3m that do different things. Like there's one here for Google. So this is a script for Google that you can use. Not quite sure if it strips off the URL or something. Does what I've been doing. I think it may be something where you can actually match a page that's got google.com in it and pass it to this script. And you can see down in this section here what it's got is this little bit w3m control, and then like go to, and then URL or delete previous buffer. And these commands actually control w3m from a script, but you have to have these scripts installed in a certain location to be able to do that. You can't put them in your home directory. I think they've got to be in user lib w3m cgi-bin. Put that back up and put the long listing on. So you can see here there's a bunch of scripts in here, and this is one I'm using with a script for fuzzy finding search raw from within w3m, and that has in it some sort of commands to control w3m, and it has to go in this particular directory to be able to work for security reasons. So if I just open this up here, come down here, you see these printfs down the bottom: w3m control, go to, delete previous buffer. And so these are controlling w3m from within this script and telling it to open a particular page. It's basically going to open the clipboard, which will contain a URL. But these sort of scripts that control w3m actually have to go in the user lib w3m cgi directory, whereas the w3m cgi, I have a CGI directory in my w3m directory in my home folder with my scripts, and these don't run that printf statement and then not sending a command to w3m. And if they did, they would have to be in that directory I just showed you. So there are two locations for the CGI scripts. Previous one I just showed you, or this one in your home directory that you actually have to create the cgi-bin directory, and you also have to make all these executable, as I said, otherwise they're not going to run. And once you've done that, you can create key maps. So you've got the key map here, which is like mn in this case, and then we're running a command saying read shell, and we're basically running that shell command, that shell script CGI file. And basically, as I said, we set a variable URL to be equal to current link, and then if the URL is not empty, there is a link where, as I say, we run it through grep, search, see if there's Google in it, then we decode the URL and store that in the result, and then we check a result contains a link, and if it is, we set the result, we set URL to be equal to the result. So that would basically be the link without all the Google stuff, just a link to YouTube or whatever. And then again, otherwise what we do is we, if result is empty, we set URL back to the current link. So that would basically mean we're not on a Google video page or Google search result. And if the current link is totally empty, what we do is we set the URL be the page URL. So if your cursor's not over anything, it's basically going to send the page URL to this section down here, where we run MPV with the no terminal option and then play the URL. So that's basically these scripts. They're all the same block of code. It's just the video or audio player we're opening the link with, and I say it's easier to put it all in one script rather than trying to run several scripts after the other, because it's there were issues actually getting stuff from one script into another, with stuff like pipe buffer, which keeps the buffer open in w3m, and basically what it means is that you can't browse and have the video open. So that's why we don't use the pipe buffer command. We just basically take the URL and then play it with something. It just means there's less moving parts to break. We've just got the one script to worry about to extract the URL and then play it. As I said, in this case we're using the TSP command for task spooler, which I covered in a previous video, setting it full screen on a particular display and playing the URL. And the pinch script, exactly the same block of code. We're just running this pinch script that I've covered in previous videos, which will basically take the link from a YouTube video and grab the audio URL and then pass it to MPD, so that it will basically queue the audio up from different links, so you can queue up different music videos to play with MPD player. So those are the scripts, and you set up the keymap, just rather than having in this case here, you can see in this command here for readability mode, which basically strips like readability mode for your browser. It strips out all the stuff and just gives you the content. You can see here I'm actually running a block of code here, whereas in the ones up here I'm actually running a CGI script, which is basically a shell script and a bit of Python thrown in for good measure. So it just makes your keymaps a bit cleaner, rather than trying to put in loads of code. It's not too bad in this one, but if you're sort of trying to pipe stuff through multiple things, it can start to get messy, and it's probably better to put them in a CGI script that you can run. So that's basically the keymaps. How you create the keymaps, where you put the scripts, and how you can find out some of the variables for w3m. So close that and run w3m again. Across and search for something. Show you the environmental variables again. So if I press Shift 1 to execute the shell, run env, pipe it into sort, like that, down here. Env pipe sort. You can see the environmental variables. You can see current link, and that's the link my cursor's over. And again, the URL, the home page the page we're on. So move that to something else. On that again. You can see the current link is over Wikipedia, whereas the URL is the Google search page. So that's basically how that works, and how you can see the environmental variables for the current link or the page link. And that's useful because, as I said, we can use those in the actual CGI script. So we can use those environmental variables in our scripts to detect the current link or the actual page URL, and actually manipulate the URL and then pass them to different programs. So that's how you sort of figure that stuff out. And again, the other thing was the location of both the CGI scripts folders. So there are two locations. There's user lib w3m cgi, and these scripts are ones that, as I showed you, send commands to w3m browser to like open particular URLs or stuff, and they have to go in this directory for security reasons. But there's also the CGI directory that you have to create in your w3m directory, where you can put your own scripts as long as they don't contain commands that send instructions to w3m. So in this case, basically, for these ones, we're just running these, and these are just like running a regular shell script. It's just they've got a CGI extension for w3m, but they are actually shell scripts, as you can see from the shebang bin sh. So you don't need any special sort of coding skills to do stuff with the CGI scripts. You know, you can use any. I think you can basically use anything in these. Could be a Perl script, could be Python, Bash, shell script, ZSH, whatever. So that's where you can put all your block of code to manipulate the URL, and then open the URL with a video player or audio player. And the other thing was the location of the documentation for w3m. So user share docs w3m, and you'll see you've got examples, FAQ, got the manual, which is actually an HTML, but you can use the README. I think the README is exactly the same as the manual HTML, just you can read it in the terminal, because the HTML will just be displayed as source code. And the readme.func is the one with all the functions. So I'll just open up again quickly. So that's where you can find all the commands that you can use to get w3m to do stuff. And the reason I mention this is because it's actually, if you search for some of this stuff online, you don't find anything. So I was like searching for particular commands for ages in Google and just getting the same results. And I should have just looked in the user share doc w3m directory, and because it's got all this stuff here, or particular commands that you can run in your keymap or in your scripts to do stuff like download stuff, open links, go to links, load. So the interesting ones were the pipe buffer, which, as I said, has got issues with keeping the buffer open. You can pipe a shell. You can run pipe shell and pipe the output of something into another command. read shell is what you want to do when you're actually running scripts or commands in your keymap, because otherwise, if you run the shell command, it's going to pop up a little dialog box saying click any key to continue, which the read shell command doesn't have that issue. So that's the shell command down here. And another thing that's useful is the view command here. What I'll do is I'll just shift back to Emacs into the keymap file. Where was the yeah, here, the readability mode. Basically what this does is it will toggle the let me open w3m again. w3m how.com. So what I'm just going to do is come down to an article. That, and I'll press the keyboard shortcut comma dot, you see it's turned on readability mode by piping it through the Python readability library to remove all the links at the top and just give us the actual page. I can go back, click that again, so switch between that, and the way that works is by running command read shell, and then basically what we're doing is instead of running a CGI script here, we're running Python readability, the w3m URL I mentioned, which is the page you're on, pipes that to dev null, so we don't get any output. And then what happens is, by default, the Python readability library will actually output HTML as source code. So what happens is, we didn't have this view delete previous buffer section here, you would basically see back here, oops, back. So by default, what would happen is it displays the code like this. So this section here, Python 3 readability, up to this comma, if we don't have this section over here, what happens is it will just display like that. So what happens is you can press V on the keyboard and it toggles between source code view and rendered HTML like that. Yeah, and that was V on the keyboard. So what we're doing here is we're running the view command that I showed you in the readme.func file that toggles between source code view and the rendered view. So what happens is, the way this works is it's like running a series of commands separated by comma in the terminal. It's running the Python script which outputs the raw HTML, then it runs the view command, which is like pressing V on the keyboard. So that toggles the HTML rendered view on, and then we delete the previous buffer, because what happens is when you run these commands in w3m one after another, it's actually creating sort of buffers to do the job. And what happens is, if I was to try and go back from this page here, see how I can go back and it goes back to the page automatically. If I didn't have that delete previous buffer command there, what would happen is it would go to a page saying output of shell command, and then you'd have to click back twice. So basically what this allows you to do is run one command and then run these w3m commands after it. So you could do like read shell and then another read shell to do something else. But these are w3m built-in commands from the readme.func that do stuff like, toggle the HTML or delete the previous buffer. And in the script up here that I showed you, what we're doing is we're running read shell, and we're just running the CGI script. You can see here we've got back, and basically that does the same thing, but for the CGI script. So when the CGI script runs, what will happen after it's finished executing and you quit MPV player, w3m will actually return to a previous buffer saying output of shell command when the script is finished running. So what you do is you run back, and it will go back from that buffer to the page you're actually on. And you can't actually notice it, as I showed you when I was running the script. So that's why there are sometimes you actually want to run the back command or the delete previous buffer command after you've either run a CGI script or a chunk of code in a read shell command. So those are some of the things I just wanted to cover with w3m and CGI scripts, and opening links with video and audio players. And the other thing that was sort of w3m related was if I come across here, these are feeds for YouTube channels that I can open with Newsboat. And the interesting thing is, if I try and go to w3m YouTube, spell it properly, youtube.com, you'll see that we're actually sort of blocked on youtube.com with w3m because it's not a JavaScript browser, and we can't do anything. But if I put in the feed URL, you'll see that it can actually open the feed URL for a channel on YouTube. What's interesting here is you actually have different stuff like the channel, the video ID, for instance, and then you have the full link. So you've got the full link here, and then the video ID, and you can actually play videos using MPV player with just the ID. Let's see where we go. Yeah, so you can actually open a YouTube video just using its ID by running MPV ytdl : / and then the actual video ID. Let me just come back to this one. When was it? This one. Yeah, so let's see, let's take this video ID here, copy it, MPV ytdl : / at, and I typed MPC. Give it a second. Okay, and there's DistroTube. So the reason why that's interesting is because we can actually just take the video ID here, as opposed to the actual full link, and open it with MPV. So it got me thinking. You've basically got the title, you've got the video ID or the full URL, and there is actually also thumbnail. So let's just grab that, and then run Faye. Okay, so you can actually see you've got the thumbnail there for the video in the RSS feed. But the issue is if I open Newsboat, they come across the DistroTube, you'll see basically it doesn't display the images, any of this stuff. So, you know, I got the title and I've got the link there, but I don't have the image. And And the other thing is you don't actually have the description down here either. But if I come back to this section down here, you'll see you've got the entry, you've got the video ID, you have the title, and the image. You've got the image, and then you've got the description as well. So that's the description under the video. So what it got me thinking was, would there be a way, since you can open these pages with w3m, to actually pull out some of this stuff and sort of reformat it as HTML, and basically be able to have the title, the link, and the image and the description, rather than using Newsboat, where you don't get the image and you don't get the description, and you have two different programs to switch between using w3m and Newsboat. Would it be possible just to, using some XML library or something, to pull out some of this stuff and, you know, type it through something and reformat it as HTML, so that you could just basically open these feeds with w3m and have it run a script to automatically reformat it as HTML and give you all the links and the images and the descriptions, so that basically you've got RSS feeds in w3m but formatted as HTML, because we can't use w3m with YouTube. So that was just another thought I had. If anyone's got any bright ideas about how you might best be about, how you might best go about pulling out some of this stuff and sort of reformat, leave a comment. But that was just something else I thought I might take a look at. Basically taking these YouTube feed for channels or playlists, which you can actually open in w3m, and then somehow sort of reformatting, so then we've actually got links which we could then sort of click on, and basically that would mean that we could have sort of like YouTube RSS feeds in w3m with images and descriptions, which would be quite cool. So that was just some stuff I wanted to cover with w3m and CGI scripts. And I've got the CGI scripts up on GitHub if you want to have a look. And basically you can just come across, go raw, save page as, or use a command line program to download the URL. Then what you need to do is actually put those in your, you need to create the w3m CGI scripts directory first of all, because it doesn't exist by default, and then basically just move the scripts into the directory. And the most important thing is that you need to make them executable. Change mod +x w3m CGI, like that, because otherwise they're not going to run. And the final thing you need to do is actually set up the keymap to run the particular script. That's how you can change the keyboard shortcuts. We just run the script, and then at the end we stick in the back option, so that when the script finishes running, it stays on the same page as w3m, because otherwise what happens is when the script finishes running, or the command finishes running, it will basically take you to another page displaying output of shell command, and the path to the CGI script or the command that was run. So there's a couple of things I just wanted to cover with w3m, environmental variables, where you can find the commands and the documentation, and the directories that they're in, and the difference between some of the options like read shell or pipe buffer, and how you can execute multiple commands one after another. So this is the equivalent of running you know, like echo 1, comma, echo 2. So that's running that command and then that command, and that's basically the equivalent here. The commas separating these commands, and these can either be built-in commands. If you want to run a command, you need to sort of like run read shell and either the path to the script or command in single quotes. And you can use the environmental variables in the commands like w3m URL or w3m current link. I've written the command here in the keymap, or actually from within the CGI script. So those are some of the things I wanted to cover that have popped up when I've been trying this out. And the easiest way to get this to work is just to put some of the stick your code in a CGI script, make it executable, set up the keyboard shortcut read shell, and you can then basically sort of run your own scripts. And it's a good idea to sort of when you're sort of starting off is just to do stuff like echo current link or w3m URL, and that will display in the terminal, so you can actually see what's going on. So you can just print stuff out, and then it'll print out when you run the script from within w3m. So that's all for now, and that's just some stuff I've come across hacking away at w3m and getting it to pipe audio and video to different programs.